Today, we will tell the story of an 18-year-old American girl named Mandy Stavik. She mysteriously disappeared after lunch while going for a run, only a few hundred meters from home. Afterward, her body was found, and the case became a mystery that dragged on for many years, with the police nearly giving up. However, after 30 years, thanks to the reasonable help from multiple people, the killer was finally brought to justice. This is the Mandy Stavik case. Background on Mandy Stavik. Mandy Stavik was born on April 16, 1971, and she was a cheerful girl. Her family lived in Acme, a small town in Whatcom County, Washington State, USA. Washington State is located in the northwestern United States, bordering Canada to the north. The town of Acme is vast but sparsely populated, with a resident population of fewer than 300 people. The locals mostly make a living from agriculture, and for a long time, the town's security has been good, with residents mostly knowing each other. Mandy's family did not originally live in Acme Town. 5 years earlier, Mandy's parents divorced. Her mother, Mary, took Mandy and her younger brother, Lee, and moved from Alaska to Washington State. Their home was located at the end of a highway in the town, with the house backing onto a forest, providing a very quiet living environment. Mandy originally had an older brother named Brent. When Mandy was 4 years old, her brother Brent, after obtaining relevant approval, entered a forest with a military base to hunt. Afterward, Brent never walked out of that forest again. When Brent was found, he had been shot 17 times and unfortunately died. This case became an unsolved mystery and remains unsolved to this day. Perhaps because of this reason, her mother Mary wanted to leave that heartbreaking place, so she took Mandy and Lee to live in Acme Town. The family quickly adapted to the local living environment. This year was already the 5th year since they moved here. Mandy loved sports, and she especially liked running. In high school, Mandy joined the school's basketball team and softball team. In the eyes of her friends, she was a healthy and strong girl. In 1989, Mandy graduated from high school with excellent grades and was admitted to Central Washington University. It can be said that she had a bright future ahead. However, no one would have thought that this unfortunate family would experience another disaster. Mandy suddenly disappeared during a very ordinary run. So what exactly happened that day? How did Mandy disappear? Next, let's turn back the clock to November 24, 1989. The day of disappearance, November 24, 1989. November 24, 1989 was a Friday, and it was also the day after Thanksgiving. Due to the holiday, Mandy had returned home from Central Washington University to stay. After lunch that day, Mandy decided to go out for a run. This was one of her favorite activities. Usually at this time, her mother Mary would ride a bicycle behind Mandy to accompany her on the run. However, that day, Mary's sister came to visit the house, so she couldn't get away and couldn't accompany Mandy on the run. Since the town wasn't large and the neighbors all knew each other, it didn't seem like there would be any danger. Therefore, Mandy decided to go running alone. Let's look at the map. Here is Mandy's home. Mandy's running route started from home, running west along the highway to the other end. At the end of the road, there was a household, and next to it was a river, so she couldn't continue forward. Every time Mandy ran to here, she would turn back along the original route. This road is a straight east-west road, about 2.5 kilometers long. From home and back is 5 kilometers. On both sides of this straight road, there are only a few scattered households. Around 2:30 p.m., Mandy left the house. She was wearing a light-colored sweatshirt, green sweatpants, and blue running shoes, carrying a personal towel and leading a German shepherd named Kyra. She ran along the quiet highway while listening to music. Time passed quickly, and Mandy had already run to the end of the road and started turning back. During Mandy's run, her younger brother Lee was playing at the neighbor's house. The position where the younger brother was at that time is here. Through the window, younger brother Lee saw his sister leading Kyra running toward home. You know, the neighbor's house is very close to home, only a few hundred meters away. Therefore, at that time, younger brother Lee thought his sister would be home soon. However, no one would have thought that in this short distance of a few hundred meters from home, Mandy disappeared. Worry and search. Time came to 4:30 p.m. At this point, 2 hours had passed since Mandy left the house. Even younger brother Lee had returned from the neighbor's house, but Mandy still hadn't come home. Usually at this time, Mandy would have been home long ago. Why hadn't she returned after so long today? The mother felt something was strange. She started to worry a bit. At this moment, the German shepherd Kyra returned home alone. As soon as she got home, she unusually hid away, as if something had happened. However, Mandy was still nowhere to be seen. Mother Mary felt the situation was a bit off, so she immediately called to contact Mandy's boyfriend, Rick. Mother Mary asked Rick if Mandy had gone to him. Rick said Mandy wasn't with him and they hadn't met all day. At this time, the younger son Lee told his mother that when he was at the neighbor's house, he saw Mandy leading the dog running toward home, but a long time had passed since then. Mother Mary felt more and more wrong as she listened. She couldn't sit still anymore, so she dialed the police phone and then hurriedly ran out the door to look for her daughter. Mary followed her daughter Mandy's usual running route, loudly calling her name. After the town residents learned of the situation, they joined the search for Mandy one after another. This spread from 1 to 10, 10 to 100, and soon almost all the town's residents knew about Mandy's disappearance. Some people rode horses and entered forests that cars couldn't access to search for Mandy. The police also dispatched border search helicopters for aerial assistance in the search. They also deployed professional police dogs to search near Mandy's home. They went door to door in the local town to inquire if anyone had seen Mandy. However, after a whole day of searching, Mandy was still not found. The police came to Mandy's home and wanted the German shepherd Kyra, who had run with Mandy, to go out and look for clues. The police thought that perhaps Kyra knew the last place where Mandy disappeared. However, strangely, since Kyra returned home that day, she had become very timid and refused to go out no matter what. The police speculated that the shepherd, Kyra, might have seen something and was frightened, leading to this state. Discovery of the body. Time came to November 26th, the third day of Mandy's disappearance. The search for Mandy was still ongoing. That day, search personnel found a pair of green sweatpants in a forest. This was believed to be the pants Mandy was wearing on the day she disappeared.
Afterward, the police had Mary identify if these pants were Mandy's. Mary carefully looked at the pants. They were very dirty and had a hole. Although they somewhat resembled the pants Mandy wore that day, Mary ultimately thought they were not. Subsequently, the pants were sent to the laboratory for testing, and the results showed that these pants had nothing to do with Mandy. Time came to November 27th, the fourth day of Mandy's disappearance. A pair of search personnel took a lifeboat along the local river to search, hoping to find traces of Mandy, because the rescue personnel discovered something floating there at the intersection of this river.
They went over to look and found it was Mandy. She was floating face down on the water with no vital signs. She was only wearing shoes and socks on her body, and the personal items she had with her when she left was also missing. There were no other foreign objects found near her. The place where Mandy was found was less than 10 kilometers from Mandy's home. Mandy's mother, Mary, was devastated upon receiving the news. Since Mandy was found in the river, the police could not determine if Mandy drowned or was murdered.
Forensic report and analysis. 1 day later, the autopsy report came out. Mandy's cause of death was drowning asphyxiation, and traces of assault were also found on her body. The police learned that Mandy was proficient in swimming when she was in school and had worked as a lifeguard. Moreover, the place where Mandy was found had water depth only up to a young person's calf, making it impossible for accidental drowning.
The medical examiner found a contusion on Mandy's head, indicating that Mandy might have been knocked unconscious due to head injury. Many scratches were also found on Mandy's thighs and arms, believed to be caused while crossing through bushes. Therefore, the police determined that on the day Mandy was running, she was suddenly attacked by the killer, leading to injury and coma. Afterward, the killer took Mandy through a bush area and threw her into the river.
The police judged that Mandy was already unconscious at the time, so she drowned immediately after entering the water. In the 1980s, DNA testing technology was just starting, and only a very few places could perform DNA testing. Fortunately, the Detective Peterson in charge of this case had just returned from training at the Federal Investigation Academy. With Detective Peterson's help, the FBI laboratory successfully extracted a man's DNA from Mandy's body. The police launched an in-depth investigation based on this clue.
Initial investigation. The first person the police investigated was Mandy's boyfriend, Rick. It was understood that Mandy and Rick had been together for more than 3 years, during which the two had multiple conflicts. Recently, their relationship seemed to have some problems again. Subsequently, the police found Rick. Rick was very cooperative with the police investigation. He was heartbroken upon learning of Mandy's death. He said that although he had conflicts with Mandy before, those were normal phenomena between couples, and there was no deep hatred. On the day Mandy disappeared, Rick had an alibi. After obtaining Rick's consent, the police obtained Rick's DNA sample. The results showed that the DNA on Mandy did not belong to Rick. Ultimately, the police ruled out Rick as a suspect. In the 1980s, the shocking Green River Killer case in the United States occurred in Seattle, Washington. When the Mandy case happened, the Green River Killer case had not yet been solved.
The location where Mandy was killed in Whatcom County is 185 kilometers from Seattle, not very far apart. Based on some clues found on Mandy and the modus operandi, the police suspected this case was related to the Green River Killer. The media also began to publicize that another victim of the Green River Killer had been found. The local police immediately contacted the task force investigating the Green River Killer. After case analysis, the police ultimately believed this case was unrelated to the Green River Killer. This line of clues was cut off again. As time passed, day by day, this case gradually lost direction.
Although the police obtained the killer's DNA testing capabilities were limited at the time, and there was no DNA database. Unless there was evidence or the person was willing to provide it, the police had no right to forcibly obtain others' DNA. Mother Mary wanted to find the killer. She constantly accepted media interviews to increase the case's attention. The town's residents also spontaneously raised funds to find the killer. They used the collected $25,000 entirely as a bounty to reward people who provided useful clues. At Mandy's memorial service, many of her classmates came, and a large number of media reported on it. That day, Mandy's boyfriend Rick also came. He stood in front of Mandy's purpose, holding a teddy bear doll. This was Mandy's favorite doll. In this case, although the police extracted the killer's DNA, the police had no other evidence, so they could not lock in more suspects. This case then became an unsolved case. Restarting the investigation in 2009. Time came to 2009, 20 years after the Mandy case occurred. The killer who killed Mandy still had not been found. A detective named Bauhe took over this case. This was the third detective to take over the Mandy case. He was very concerned about this case that happened 20 years ago and tried to crack it. So under Detective Bauhe's leadership, this case was restarted for investigation. After Detective Bauhe carefully listened to Mother Mary's description of the case back then, he noticed points that might have been overlooked. The town had few residents back then. Detective Bauhe thought that although the town had few residents, this could not exclude them from suspicion. Bauhe thought of a case that happened in the UK where a woman was killed in a village. Because there weren't many people there, the police did DNA matching on all the people around and ultimately successfully found the killer. Based on this idea, Detective Bauhe returned to the police station. He made a list of the residents living in the town back then and visited them one by one for investigation. At the end of the investigation, Detective Bauhe would ask them to provide their DNA samples. It should be noted here that U.S. law stipulates that the police cannot forcibly obtain people's DNA without any evidence. People have the right to refuse to provide it. Only after obtaining the person's consent can DNA samples be obtained. Therefore, among the interviewed residents, some were willing to provide and some were not. After visiting more than 100 residents, including the detective, no valuable clues were obtained. This investigation lasted several years and the case still had no breakthrough. Clue from two mothers in 2013. In June 2013, two mothers living in Bellingham, Washington State, Heather and Marilee, took their children out to play together. During their conversation,
They inadvertently mentioned the case that happened in Acme Town back then. At that time, the case was boiling, almost known to everyone. The two said that where they lived was not far from the area where Mandy's home was, so both were very clear about this case at the time. During the conversation, the two coincidentally mentioned the same person. This person was named Tim Bass. They said that back then, this Tim Bass had harassed them. The place where this Tim Bass lived back then was near Mandy's home. The two's unintentional conversation led to the same person. Was this just a coincidence? The more they thought about it, the more suspicious they felt. They thought this clue might help the case, so they reported it to the police. After the police received the report, they investigated this clue. They pulled out the case records from back then and found that Tim Bass had not done a DNA test. The police found that the place where Tim Bass lived back then was on the route where Mandy disappeared while running. Let's look at the map. Mandy's home is in this position. Tim Bass's home is in this position. Because Mandy's younger brother said he saw Mandy already running back and not far from home, the police at the time did not suspect Tim Bass much. According to the investigation, in January 1990, which was 2 months after the Mandy case, Tim Bass married his then-girlfriend and moved away from Acme Town, where he lived back then. Now Tim Bass lives in Everson, Washington. Tim Bass and his wife have 3 children, and he has a job as a truck driver. After understanding the situation, the police decided to meet this Tim Bass. The investigators came to Tim Bass's current home and wanted to ask if he knew about Mandy. What surprised the police was that Tim Bass said he didn't remember any Mandy. Only after the investigators' reminder did he recall. This abnormal behavior aroused high suspicion from the investigators. You know, back then, the Mandy case was known to everyone in the town. It was big news in the town. Tim Bass's home was so close to Mandy's home back then, and the place where Mandy ran would pass by Tim's house every time. How could he forget just like that? Then the investigators didn't waste words with Tim Bass and directly asked him a soul-piercing question, whether he was willing to provide his DNA sample. Upon hearing this, Tim Bass decisively refused such a request. He said he didn't trust the police. Tim Bass's performance made the police vaguely feel that hope for solving the case had come. But another difficult problem was in front of the police. Without any evidence, they could not forcibly obtain Tim Bass's DNA. Illegally obtained evidence would also be declared invalid. Collecting DNA and arrest. Tim Bass was a driver for a bakery. The police found the bakery's female manager, Kim Wagner. The police told Kim that they were investigating one of his company's employees and hoped he could provide the driver's route so the police could track and monitor the suspect. The purpose was to collect some cigarette butts or other things with DNA. After understanding the situation, Kim felt that this matter might infringe on citizens' personal privacy, so he refused the police's request. However, later, some things happened that changed Kim's mind. 2015 was 26 years after the Mandy case and 2 years after the police locked onto Tim Bass. During these 2 years, the police repeatedly requested Tim to voluntarily provide DNA samples, but were refused each time. And it was in this year that bakery manager Kim once again learned about this case in a conversation with a friend. He changed his mind. One day, Kim was chatting with a friend at a bar. The friend inadvertently mentioned Mandy's case and said that one of his company's employees, Tim Bass, used to live in the same place as Mandy, and Tim's home was on the road where Mandy disappeared while running. This is when Kim realized that the person the police wanted to find 2 years ago was Tim Bass. Kim started paying attention to him. Kim discovered that Tim Bass never handed his uniform to the company for cleaning, and he would take home the trash in the company as if guarding against someone. In 2017, when the police came to Kim's office again, Kim took the initiative to provide Tim Bass's delivery route and fully cooperated with the police investigation. After learning the route, the police immediately started tracking and investigating Tim Bass. Tim Bass was very alert. He didn't smoke or drink, always wore gloves when driving, and would take home the trash in the car to dispose of. The police had no opportunity to obtain Tim Bass's DNA sample. At this time, Kim took the initiative to offer to help the police obtain it. Kim said this, "I am now also a mother. If something like this happened to my daughter, I would also hope someone could help me. I can understand a mother's feelings. If I can help this case, I will do my best." The police agreed to Kim's request. From then on, Kim began to closely observe Tim Bass's behavior. It is worth noting that if Kim voluntarily offered to help and provided the police with Tim Bass's DNA, the evidence obtained this way is legal. August 10th, 2017 was a key day. Bakery manager Kim saw Tim Bass take a disposable cup from near the water dispenser to get water to drink. After drinking, Tim Bass directly threw the cup into the trash can. After Tim Bass left, Kim quickly went over, picked up the cup, hid it in his drawer, and immediately notified the police. The police rushed to the bakery to get the cup and sent it to the laboratory for DNA testing. A few days later, the DNA test results came out. The report showed that the DNA found on Mandy back then completely matched Tim Bass's. At this point, the killer who harmed Mandy back then finally surfaced. In December 2017, the police arrested Tim Bass on charges of first-degree murder. During the interrogation, Tim Bass appeared unusually calm. When he learned that the police had obtained his DNA, he said, "I've ensured through all the wrong things that you didn't get my DNA. How did this happen? Where did I mess up?" Tim Bass denied being the killer who murdered Mandy. He claimed that he met Mandy in a chance encounter and then slowly became a secret lover. The day before the Mandy case was Thanksgiving. After Mandy returned home from school, they had been together. That's why Mandy had his DNA on her. The 2019 trial. In May 2019, the Mandy case officially went to trial. In court, Tim Bass refused to plead guilty. He insisted he was innocent and said that on the day of the incident, he had been with his wife the whole time. His wife could testify for him. However, this statement was quickly broken by a witness. This witness was none other than his wife. At the time of the incident, his wife was still Tim Bass's girlfriend. In court, she said that on the day of the incident, she hadn't seen Tim Bass all day. She added that 2 years ago, in 2017, the police had come to the home to inquire. At that time, her husband, Tim Bass, asked her to provide an alibi for him, saying he was with her all day that day. Her husband also asked her to say that she saw Mandy running that day. In fact, she wasn't there that day. The wife then said that Tim Bass once said to her while watching a crime show, "If it were me, I would never be so stupid. It's easy to get rid of suspicion if caught." The reason Tim Bass's wife exposed her husband was because her husband had multiple violent behaviors toward her and the children. She really couldn't tolerate it anymore. There was another key witness in court, Tim Bass's younger brother, Tom Bass. Tom said that when the investigators asked him to provide a DNA sample, Tim Bass appeared very anxious. The reason he was anxious was because the DNA between biological brothers has extremely high similarity. If Tom's DNA was sent for testing, the police would know the killer was his relative. This happened in the Golden State Killer case in California, USA, which was solved this way. Of course, that's another case. I'll explain it to everyone if there's a chance later. In court, Tom exposed that his older brother, Tim Bass, had asked him to commit perjury. His brother hoped Tom would say he also had a secret lover relationship with Mandy. The purpose was to create the image that Mandy was a very casual person. Tom frankly said Mandy was one of his friends, so he refused to commit perjury. In the face of ironclad evidence one after another, the jury quickly reached a consensus. The court ruled that Tim Bass was guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced him to 27 years in prison. This was the highest sentence the judge could give after Washington State abolished the death penalty in 2018. After the sentencing, Jim Bass said, "I am 100% innocent. I have no malice toward anyone here, but I feel very sad about this. For Mandy's family, after waiting bitterly for 30 years, they finally had a result. On Mandy's mother Mary's 81st birthday, the police visited and told her the news that they had caught the killer." Mary had lost her son and daughter, one after another. Her life was unfortunate. At this moment, her eyes were filled with tears. She felt this was the best birthday gift she had ever received in her life. Mandy could finally rest in peace.